Hello everybody, I am the Linkzilla, and today I wanted to talk about Jurassic World Dominion. Now that the movie is less than 1 month away, it's finally about time I started to talk about it, and sort of give you guys a bit of an explanation as to why I fell off of talking about Jurassic Park for all this time. I'm going to try and keep this succinct, but I'm not trying to give excuses. I'm trying to give an inherent explanation as to why it is that I haven't talked about the Jurassic franchise in quite some time, in addition to all the other problems that I had faced throughout the year. Now, back in the spring of 2018, back when Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom was on the horizon and was set to come out that summer, I got very excited about the Jurassic Park franchise again. It was exactly like what I had thought that Jurassic World would have done for the franchise, finally putting it back into the public consciousness and getting people to think about it again. It was the 25th anniversary of the entire Jurassic Park franchise, and I was so excited about celebrating it with this new movie that was shaping up to be the darkest and most thought-provoking of all the Jurassic Park sequels. And, well, as a response to that, I wanted to get on YouTube and play as many of the Jurassic Park games as I could, as well as make as many contributions to the Jurassic Park Minecraft project that I had for a long time. In regards to that Minecraft project, however, I basically began to realize that it was far too resource heavy on both myself with my time and my computer with trying to keep up with all the graphics and the glitches that the mod was basically producing. So effectively speaking, unless I decide to go with a smaller scale version of that park using the current up-to-date Minecraft technology that I have available to me, the project will most likely remain unfinished, because at this point it would look like doing this on my own, it would take upwards the better part of a decade for me to actually get it done all by myself. So anyways, the Jurassic Park 25th anniversary came and went, and I was excited about doing more Jurassic Park videos, even though the initial backlash against Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom didn't intimidate me all that much, because one of the things about movies is that time will tell. Time will be the deciding factor with all movies, and I will explain what that means before the end of this little video rant. However, I basically began to question if I was ultimately prepared to take on the responsibility of what I had planned, because I had a lot of Jurassic World videos and Jurassic Park discussion videos rearing and ready to go with so many things that I wanted to talk about. For example, this creature here on the screen, there was a bit of a subject of debate and speculation involved in this animal, and I was planning to use it for a video, particularly in a video taking down certain critics of Jurassic World who completely misunderstood the concept, and I basically wanted to use this animal as a showcase for it. However, in hindsight, I feel like I've waited too long to make that video, as now anybody who knows this animal and recognizes it knows that this animal is now set to appear in Jurassic World Dominion. Not this design, however. This is basically has nothing to do with Jurassic Park. What I'm saying is, now that this animal is actually going to make its appearance, I have a feeling that my initial argument is either going to be outdated or somewhat redundant by the fact that they're going to actually feature this animal in Jurassic World Dominion. And I was really only intending to use it to take down a certain critic who honestly just never understood the Jurassic Park sequels and kept expecting them to be something that they just weren't. And ironically, he kept expecting them to be something worse than what they currently are. But still, I was going to take him down for the rather childish execution he had in his review, and I was planning to basically make other response videos that were meant to debunk and basically just tear apart all the really bad take criticisms that people had been giving of both Jurassic World and Fallen Kingdom, but that was going to take time and energy, and unfortunately, As much as I wanted to get in on the Jurassic Park discussion video scene, it just really wasn't in the cards because effectively the two videos that I had on the channel, the ones that I put so much effort in to try and basically make not only convincing arguments but very high quality videos, they ironically didn't do as well as I needed them to do to see if this project was worth pursuing. Even though that's ironic, considering that of my videos, they're probably some of the best videos that I actually have in terms of viewership. The thing about it is that it just made it seem like the audience that I was garnering with this channel weren't interested in talking about theories about Jurassic Park or discussing what the movies were doing, coming up with various ideas and theories and speculations based on every single facet of the franchise, from not just the movies, but the books, the comics, the video games, anything that we can get our hands on. It just didn't seem like you guys were all that interested. But I still was interested in talking about these movies, and I kept thinking, I'll get back to it eventually. Maybe I'll start doing it next week, maybe I'll start doing it next month. But as my life became more and more hectic and unstable, had to keep pushing things back, had to finish up graduating through college, had to finish up moving out of my dorm room at the end of the semester, had to put up with living with complete strangers, getting a new job, and finding one that actually fit with me, with my skill set, and with the effectively giving me a comfortable lifestyle, and then finally moving into a new apartment all by myself. So needless to say, there was just a whole lot of things that just kept pushing everything back to the point where it just didn't seem like I had the ability to put all that much effort and detail into making high quality Jurassic Park related content anymore. So I stuck with Let's Playing because I figured that would at least keep my channel alive, because I could largely just record myself playing a video game, upload it directly to YouTube, but it looks like that's really not gaining all that much traction either, so I really got to get back together with Gannon to see if he can help me out with some of this. I've wanted to continue talking about Jurassic Park for a long time. It is my all-time favorite movie, and I have so much to say about it, and so I figured that now that the movie is just 1 month out, it's time for me to finally knuckle down and start talking about Jurassic World Dominion. And so it ultimately I didn't want it to be like this, because I initially planned to actually have my big return be a reaction video to the trailer, but I guess I just don't really have the enough time and the proper mindset to actually react to it. Plus, I had already basically seen the trailer, so it wouldn't have been genuine anyway. So there's so much about the Jurassic Park franchise that I do want to talk about, but in order to finally get to where I am about talking about Jurassic World, I need to start talking about two negatives that I have with this entire situation. Negative number one is that I'm both anticipating and dreading the release of Jurassic World Dominion for almost the exact opposite reason that I was for Jurassic World. Because don't get me wrong, they're similar, but they're different. In a sense. You see, what I said in my 14-year-long journey video, and the anticipation and wait for Jurassic World was so monumental that I knew if Jurassic World was going to bring the franchise back, it would either revive it or it would kill it. It would either be the movie that put Jurassic Park back on the map and back into the cultural zeitgeist, or it would be the final nail in the coffin that had basically sealed the franchise's fate. So, I was glad to find out that it was the former rather than the latter, and it basically did what I needed it to do, at least, although I just don't get why movie-going audiences cannot see what the commentary that movie was trying to do. But then again, they're so used to how bad things have gotten in Hollywood that they can't put their own cynical biases aside and have to keep pointing out everything that they find wrong, because they're vigilant, I guess. They're constantly on the lookout for the deception that Hollywood has basically done. The problem is that Jurassic World as a franchise, Jurassic Park as a franchise, is different than the rest of Hollywood because, well, for the one thing, it's actually made by people who actually have some modicum of integrity, and two, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World are not trend chasers, they are trend setters. So, effectively speaking, they're not going to jump onto a bandwagon just to appeal to a larger audience because they know that by virtue of being one of the greatest films of all time, the audience that they already have access to is massive. So, I mean, it's basically like in using Marvel as an analogy. They at Marvel Disney, Chris Pratt, who is also starring in Jurassic World, he's been being harassed. Let's face it, he's being harassed by people on social media for his belief system and his political alignment, when in reality, what he believes and who he is basically supporting literally does not hurt anyone, as opposed to the other side that's literally knocked us into an economic crisis. So I can't help but point out that, like, hey Chris, none of that shit's happening over here at Jurassic World. Maybe it's time to basically affirm where your loyalties lie. So, Jurassic World, the Jurassic Park franchise, isn't about that shit. They're not going to do that and they're not going to allow their actors to basically come under fire like that, and that's a good thing, because too many of those kind of obnoxious people have infiltrated that fan base and are now pushing out the genuine fans who are there to see a good story. Whereas Jurassic World and the Jurassic Park franchise has largely remained pure. Basically speaking, we don't care what the people in the movie are, who they are, what they are up to. As long as we get a good product in the end, we're going to watch, we're going to enjoy it. So, now don't get me wrong, there are some things about the Jurassic Park franchise that do sort of go in that direction, but I honestly think that it's better to have it all condensed into one character who can easily just be removed from the plot if you don't like listening to what they have to say. Just one character who leans in that obnoxious direction, who thankfully doesn't look like they're coming back for the sequel, because seriously, fuck that character. Jurassic Park has no need for a character like that. But the point is that so why am I going into this rambling rant about this? It's because I want people to be excited about the Jurassic Park franchise in the same way that I am, and yet people are treating it like it's just another face in the crowd, and that's not a good thing to do, because Jurassic Park really is something special. It's something beyond other movies, but maybe I'll get into that like later on at the end of the rant. The point is that what I'm afraid of with Jurassic World Dominion is not just the idea of whether or not the movie will be bad. It's because of the fact that Jurassic World Dominion is not only the final movie in the Jurassic World trilogy, it's meant to be the closing chapter of the entire Jurassic saga. Effectively speaking, this is the movie that's meant to tie in the Jurassic World trilogy to the Jurassic Park trilogy and mesh them all together and bring them into a satisfying conclusion. This is meant to be the whole shebang. 6 movies, 1 story, 1 final conclusion. And I have very mixed feelings about that, because one, I waited 14 years from after Jurassic Park 3 knocked the franchise into a coma for Jurassic World to finally see the light of day. 14 years. That is enough time for a child to be born and become a teenager. There are people who were literally born before or after Jurassic Park 3 who don't know the true wonder of Jurassic Park, whose first experiences with Jurassic Park could be Jurassic World, and they don't know the burden of having to wait to see the franchise come back. Because Jurassic Park is undoubtedly my most favorite thing in existence. Every single facet of my life keeps coming back around to Jurassic Park in one way or another, not even by my own intent. It's literally how it just ends up happening sometimes. So, the idea is that I had to wait so long, nearly a lifetime, to get Jurassic Park back, and now it's already going away again. So, in a lot of ways, I'm just not ready to say goodbye. I don't want this franchise to end. Now, it's been announced, and a lot of people are speculating, that just because Jurassic World Dominion is now the conclusion of the Jurassic Park trilogy, doesn't necessarily mean that the Jurassic Park franchise has to end. In order to fully understand this, I have to explain it to you. It's basically... There's basically been evidence to showcase that back during the production of the original Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg negotiated with Universal Pictures for a contract that would guarantee a total of 6 Jurassic Park movies. And a lot of people have speculated in the interim that Jurassic World and its trilogy is the fulfillment of that contract, meaning that contractually obligated, they could stop at 6 and never have to do Jurassic Park movies again. But, like, knowing Hollywood, that's probably not the way that it's going to be. Although, like I said, the people who make these movies actually have integrity, so maybe it should be that way. But the point is, the franchise can continue with video games, with comic books, spin-off novels, and more importantly, spin-off tie-in TV series, like Netflix's Camp Cretaceous. And I've only watched one season of Camp Cretaceous, and I admit, it was pretty good. I don't remember thing one about any of the characters, because I watched it like a couple of years ago, back when it first came out. I was excited about Season 2, but before I knew it, I didn't have time to actually sit down and watch it. I don't really have the kind of lifestyle for the Netflix binge sessions anymore, and before I knew it, Season 3, Season 4, and now I think we're on Season 5, if I'm right, and I'm just wondering, what year is it? What year did I spend in hypersleep? How the heck did the world suddenly start moving too fast? But anyways, Camp Cretaceous is interesting, and if I'm remembering what happened in the series correctly, and judging the trailers correctly, I think that some things that are referenced in Camp Cretaceous are actually going to be brought up in Jurassic World Dominion. But then again, I'll have to go back and watch the entire series for myself. So, But that's like one of the negatives. The fact that the Jurassic Park film franchise could be coming to an end. I'm saying could be, because they always have the option to make more movies, even though I don't believe that they actually would. Because here's another thing about this. What I'm worried about isn't the fact that they might not make more movies. I'm worried that they might not make more theatrical movies. Like, what if they keep making Jurassic Park content and they start porting them straight to video? That, to me, would be the point where Jurassic Park truly loses what makes itself special and ends up becoming another face in the cinematic Hollywood crowd. Now, let me explain why. Seeing a movie in the theaters, even if it's a movie that you know very well, it's a very different experience, because going to the movie theater, it's not something that you can do on a regular basis. It's a treat. It's a little reward that you give yourself for working hard during the week or during the year, that you finally get a chance to just sit back and be entertained for a couple of hours at the cost of about $14, but still. And Jurassic Park is not only no exception to this, it's probably the gold standard of this. Jurassic Park, it's not enough to just own copies of it to watch at home when you want. You could watch it over and over and over again, because Jurassic Park is truly something special, and it deserves the theater experience. Take this for example. During the pandemic, most movie theaters had to shut down because, well, you know why. But about maybe half a year into the first year of the pandemic, the movie theater near my place, it opened up again. They didn't have new theater fodder in order to give to the audience, but what they did have, what they decided to do was they decided to open up their doors and play classic movies, like the original 1984 Ghostbusters or The Godfather. And one thing that they certainly did was Jurassic Park. And I was all for it. I got on my Jurassic Park TV shirt, the hat, drove out there, and I saw Jurassic Park in theaters, and I just gotta tell you, it is such an elevating experience to basically be a part of this movie in theaters, to witness it, and realizing that it was the first time I had done that in more than 20 years, it was a treat. It was spectacular, because I'll defend to my dying day, Jurassic Park was not only the first movie I ever saw, it was the first movie I ever saw in theaters, and it changed my life. It set the trajectory of my life. So, that's really why Jurassic Park really is as special as it is. So, I don't want this to be the end of Jurassic Park's theatrical run. I want more Jurassic Park movies to come out, because it's not just about seeing the movies in theaters, it's about anticipating them, following their production history, following the trailers, getting excited, building up to it. And all of this leads into the second negative that I feel about Jurassic World Dominion. Where's the hype? Now, this is an argument that I wanted to make about Godzilla vs. Kong almost a year ago. The idea that back during the winter of 2021, I was basically like waiting for a trailer for Godzilla vs. Kong to drop, and I couldn't help but notice that really the excitement and anticipation for Godzilla vs. Kong was almost non-existent. Like, the people didn't even realize that it was coming. And I couldn't help but wonder, where's the hype? Now, I'm basically saying that Jurassic World, with Jurassic World Dominion, it should have a whole lot of hype, considering that Dominion is meant to be the long-awaited conclusion of the franchise that started nearly 30 years ago. Godzilla vs. Kong literally should have double the hype and anticipation, because Godzilla vs. Kong is the rematch that was 60 years in the making. It's literally a movie that people literally have waited their entire lifetimes for, since the first time Godzilla and Kong fought back in 1962. Or was it 63? It's probably 63, but here or there, but still. The idea is that this movie should have been a bigger deal than it was, and yet it just seemed like people weren't excited about it because they weren't in the know. And it's like, it's disappointing that people aren't in the know, because you would think that people who are even non-Godzilla fans would know the idea of Godzilla fighting King Kong is something incredibly special. So, it just leads me to believe that people don't really care nowadays. That people are either willfully ignorant of all this stuff, all the meaning that these movies have going into them, or they do know the context, but they're just indifferent to it. Maybe we have entered into an age where cynicism has won out and hopeful optimism has died. Thankfully, Godzilla vs. Kong proved that the pandemic is not gonna kill the movie theater industry, because people who basically were saying that, oh, people aren't gonna go to the movies nowadays because of the virus, no, people turned out in droves to see Godzilla vs. Kong, and that proved to me that the movie was still important in the minds of the audience, to the point that Godzilla vs. Kong broke the pandemic box office record and basically literally revived the movie theater franchise. The movie-going experience during the pandemic. So, and that's why I get a little bit fearful when I hear people saying that, oh, movie theaters as a business are dying, soon we're going to switch to at-home and streaming releases, and it's like, no, you can't let that happen, because movies will literally lose one of the things that make them special, one of the things that make them larger than life, because once that happens, movies suddenly stop being a performance that you go to and sit down in a special seat for, that you basically have to kind of make an appointment for. They just become one simple click of the button away that you can have via your instant gratification. That's not good. So, but anyways, back to the hype. I admit, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, it's the smartest and darkest entry in the Jurassic Park franchise yet, but I understand that not a lot of people are ready or mature enough to actually acknowledge that. However, regardless of that, you would still think that Jurassic Park as a franchise is still big enough and exciting enough to let you know you're dealing with something special when you're watching these movies. Unfortunately, I could make the argument that maybe Jurassic World Dominion is steering into the skid that's sort of going to make these people think, oh, it's just another dinosaur movie at this point. And I'll get to that when I get to it, but the problem is that I just don't, even though I'm expecting a lot from this movie, I don't see the hype and anticipation for this movie, and I'm not really expecting for it to basically be as successful as it deserves to be, because I know how audiences and I know how critics nowadays work, and they just don't get it. They don't understand the same way that I do. But anyways, as I was basically waiting for this movie, I couldn't help but feel like, am I really excited for this one? Is the hype real? Or is the hype even still alive? Because when it came to Fallen Kingdom, I couldn't wait for it. But with Dominion, now it feels like it's coming on the horizon, and I have no way to stop it. So what I was worried about is, where was the hype? Fortunately, I managed to get the hype when I saw it in the trailers, but I'll talk about that when we get to it. I feel like I've set the stage enough and have talked negatively enough about my anticipations for the movie. Now let's get into some positives. What do I think is going to be one of the biggest positives of this upcoming movie? Well, from the moment that Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom ended, basically a lot of people were speculating as to what the final movie in the trilogy could do, and we've got confirmation a long time ago that the third entry in Jurassic World trilogy would feature the return of the original characters from Jurassic Park. The main trio of Sam Neill as Dr. Alan Grant, Laura Dern as Dr. Ellie Sattler, and Jeff Goldblum as Dr. Ian Malcolm. I almost called him Dr. Michael Crichton there, and that's kind of like a reference in and of itself, but very apt. And if you guys would have to listen to my lectures about the book in order to understand. We already got Goldblum back as Dr. Malcolm in Fallen Kingdom, but he had such a reduced role, just like how I predicted he would, because they're ultimately saving him for his role in this movie. Now, I am so excited about Dr. Grant returning for this movie. But first, let me talk about Dr. Sattler first. I gotta admit that Laura Dern, I could honestly go either way on her, because she's given me a whole lot of mixed feelings as of late. She was involved in the biggest movie of my childhood, and she comes with a lot of fond memories, but she bought a whole lot of bad will from me due to her role and stance on Star Wars Episode 8: The Last Jedi. Because she played literally the worst character to ever disgrace that franchise. So, sorry, Laura, it's going to take a whole lot for you to get back on my side with this movie. And so, because I got to admit that Laura Dern, I mean, how do I put this? I really hope that she does do good in this movie, and I hope that she is at the very least a likable character. And I really do hope that we finally get some resolution on the characters and their trajectory, and I can get past the fact that her face looks like it's pumped full of plastic. So, one of the bad wills that I sort of have is that even though I said Jurassic Park is different from those other franchises, it does have one or two cracks in its armor. And you can go back to the first movie back in 1993 to see that, because I have speculated, and it's a topic for a video that I want to do, that Ellie Sattler's characterization in the movie is a response to the negative backlash that Crichton must have received for her character in the Jurassic Park novel, despite the fact that her Jurassic Park novel counterpart is actually superior to her film counterpart, because there are just two lines in the Jurassic Park movie where Ellie Sattler becomes the voice of modern feminism, and I'm left thinking, is it even appropriate to have dialogue like this in this movie right now? It certainly is not needed, nor is it necessary, and it comes off as a little bit insulting when you think about it. But anyways, that's how I feel about Dr. Sattler returning. I'm all for Dr. Malcolm returning, because, I mean, Malcolm... Jeff Goldblum has only ever played a caricature of Dr. Ian Malcolm, but he came the closest to actually embodying who Dr. Ian Malcolm was in Fallen Kingdom much better than he had in his previous two entries in the Jurassic Park franchise. And I'm talking about the book, so you know, both the books, it is because his dialogue is actually lifted wholesale from the Jurassic Park novels, and that's something else we'll have to get to. So I'm all excited about seeing him back. I welcome it with open arms. I'm excited to see him. And then there's Sam Neill as Dr. Grant. Dr. Grant was my all-time favorite character from the original Jurassic Park movie. He was just that kind of guy that you can't help but admire. A guy who was so well-learned and passionate about dinosaurs, who is also the outdoors man of action type. It's literally like how the book described him. He wasn't some kind of egghead scientist that would basically stay in a lab all day lecturing students, what he would refer to as teacup paleontologists. He's the kind of guy that goes out and digs in the dirt. He gets dirty. He likes being outdoors. Hell, the most apt description that the novel keeps making about him is that he looks like the outdoors type. And I think that Sam Neill, and especially how Steven Spielberg kind of directed Dr. Grant, is done so in that kind of likable way that's meant to evoke who Steven Spielberg had in mind when filming Jurassic Park, because Dr. Grant is basically the paleontologist version of Indiana Jones. You don't really need to go far in order to figure that out, considering that Spielberg originally wanted Harrison Ford to play Dr. Grant, and he wanted Sean Connery to play Hammond. He decided against that because effectively he wanted this to be faithful and true to Michael Crichton's vision as much as it could be. That's neither here nor there, without it becoming Indiana Jones with dinosaurs. And it was the right decision, because Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, he's such a recognizable actor that he would literally overshadow the concept of the movie itself, as it's basically would have been, oh, it's just Indiana Jones with dinosaurs. Whereas Sam Neill, at the time, he was relatively obscure. I think he was in, like, part 3 of the Omen trilogy. I don't know... was Event Horizon... I don't know if Event Horizon had come out by that point, or if he had been in Bicentennial Man at that point. But the point is that I feel like Jurassic Park is what helped boost Sam Neill's career into being a much more high-profile actor, and why, personally, Sam Neill might feel a little begrudging about that, because it feels like everyone wants to bring him back to Jurassic Park, but we'll get to that. The point is that Sam Neill as Dr. Grant is such a likable character, and he's supposed to be, because when you get down to it, the movie in and of itself, it's about him. It's his character journey. You see, the actual story, the character arc of Jurassic Park, it's not about the dinosaurs, it's not even about the park, it's not even about the commentary about the dangerous misuse of science. At its fundamental, bottom line common denominator, it's a story about a man who doesn't like children learning to like children. Grant has this overwhelming appreciation for dinosaurs because he considers them these larger-than-life, powerful beings who sort of have a superiority to human life. They are larger and much more powerful than human beings, so he appreciates their life a bit more, and whereas he dislikes children because he deems childhood as the inferior form of human life. He does not appreciate life who he deems as less valuable than his own. So he starts out disliking kids until he gets put in a situation where he has to care for and protect Hammond's 2 grandchildren, and by the end of it, he's not only willing to keep Lex and Tim safe and look after them, he's literally willing to put his life on the line to protect them. Literally speaking, like during the climax, he's the one who's putting himself between Lex, Tim, and the Raptors, knowing that if anyone has to go first, it should be me. So, and by the end of it, he gets them all to safety. They're all flying away on the helicopter. He looks to the 2 of them all cuddled up against him sleeping and gives Ellie that look, because it's like the 2 of them started out this movie talking about the negatives of having children, with Grant saying he doesn't like kids, he doesn't want to have kids, he's not ready. That look he gives her at the end of the film is, yeah, I think I'm ready. So we were kind of hoping that the sequels would continue with Grant and Ellie together, and they should have gotten busy by now. But I'll get to that in just a moment. That's what Dr. Grant's character is for me. A guy who learns to appreciate the life that is in front of him instead of looking to the past for the life that is long gone. Life that is bygone, really. And in a lot of ways, it parallels what is going on with Hammond's story. Because Hammond, as a natural-born showman, he wants to show the world something spectacular, and he thinks that dinosaurs are the best way to do it. In a sense, he, too, is obsessed with prehistoric life to the point where it overly consumes him, to the point where he took the life surrounding him for granted. I mean, he put his grandkids in a dangerous situation without considering what could go wrong, without considering the consequences. So, to me, is an interesting parallel. 2 men who are learning to let go of the past and embrace the future, because the future is really all that they've got. Man, that's a good argument. I can't believe I came up with that on the fly. But still, I'm so excited that Dr. Grant is coming back for this movie, but I'm hoping that we get a certain kind of characterization for Dr. Alan Grant in Dominion that is hopefully a bit more redeemable than he was. Back in, oh my god, this was 21 years ago at this point. Back in 2001, when I saw the trailers for Jurassic World 3 in the movie theater, and I saw Sam Neill appear on screen as Dr. Alan Grant, I literally turned to my father, who was there with me. We both exchanged the same excited look, and we both quietly whispered to each other, "Dr. Grant!" because we were so excited at seeing him back. I couldn't believe it. So I was happy that this movie would be about bringing him back, even though I was a bit paranoid, as he said in the press release interviews, that I can't tell you whether or not my character lives or dies. I thought he was teasing us with the idea that his character was going to get killed. So, anyways, but that's neither here nor there. Oh, great. Now I'm wondering if that's a possibility now. I don't think that it is. They wouldn't do that after all these years, would they? But still, what I want to get at with talking about this is that Dr. Grant's character from Jurassic Park 3 is not really correct. It's not the same kind of character trajectory we saw him as at the end of the original Jurassic Park. It feels like he got hijacked by someone who thought that they knew better than everyone else on set. And I wonder who that could be. Because, I'm not going to lie, what Dr. Grant went through in Jurassic Park was a very traumatic experience. His life was undoubtedly in danger, where not only was he nearly eaten several times, he was caught in a stampede, and he faced the real danger of being electrocuted. needless to say, that would sort of temper anyone's view of dinosaurs. However, I don't think that that would actually apply to Dr. Alan Grant as I know the character, because really when you get into it, I'm not going to say that in Jurassic Park 3 Dr. Grant has PTSD, because it doesn't manifest that way. It's not recognizable as that. But in Jurassic Park 3, he has grown a sort of resentment for dinosaurs, as quoted by Eric Kirby in the movie, who says that in Grant's second book, it's clear that he doesn't like dinosaurs the way that he used to when he wrote the first one, before he was on the island. Grant counters this by saying, back then they hadn't tried to eat me yet. And that's all fine and dandy, but what I'm saying is that Grant in this movie kind of comes off as schizophrenic, because if Grant truly hates dinosaurs to the point that his character is being derogatory and distasteful of them, then why is it that he acts so excited when it comes to the prospect of dinosaurs, of studying them, and not only that, observing them on the island? Because think about it. Which animal was the one that basically put Grant in the most danger? Because it actually wasn't the T-Rex. The T-Rex was basically close to getting Lex and Tim, and Grant actually stepped in there to save them, driving the Rex away with a flare, although Malcolm was the one who came along and finished the job, and got the lawyer killed, so there's that, but still. Grant is the one who's rescuing the kids, but apart from pushing the car over the cliff, the Rex barely put Grant in any danger at all. No, the one animal that Grant was in the most danger of throughout the movie was the raptors. So, they're the ones that came close to killing him, several times in fact. Effectively speaking, if they're the ones that have caused such emotional and psychological trauma for Grant, why the hell is he so excited about talking about them? Effectively speaking, in the beginning of the movie, when it shows Grant and Ellie talking with each other at her home with her new husband, I might add, but we'll get to that, it shows that he has such an excitement for talking about studying the velociraptors and making so much excitement, whereas Ellie, she actually has the appropriate response to someone who was in that situation and wouldn't actually be as excited about the dinosaurs as Grant claims to be. Effectively, when he asks her if she remembers the sounds they made, she literally says, "I try not to." But you can tell it's all Grant is thinking about. He doesn't hate these animals, he's greatly excited by them, and he wants to continue studying them, to the point where even when he's on the island, and the two raptors have got the other members of the group stuck in a tree, he's actually hiding in the bushes, watching these two animals as they communicate, and he's fascinated by it. He can't not be, because I honestly don't think he hates dinosaurs. I think that he wants to convince himself that he is, but he just isn't. And I hope that the movie actually acknowledges that, because hating dinosaurs isn't in Alan Grant's character, and I can prove it. The character that Sam Neill plays in the movie did go through a whole lot, but it is nothing compared to the scrapes and escapes that his novel counterpart went through. You basically had, like, the raptors at the end. The Rex basically nearly got Grant almost as much as it nearly got Lex and Tim in the novel, and even more encounters than in the movie. So, at the end of it all, Grant from the novel went through a whole lot worse and came out even a whole lot more bloodied and beaten than Grant from the movie did, and yet at the end of it all, he doesn't hate dinosaurs. He still recognizes them as just animals doing what they do. All he had to do was basically outfox them, or basically outmaneuver them. The point is that by the end of it, he's still willing to go head first into an underground raptor's nest just for the chance to see these animals in a natural environment and count how many eggs they had laid. Literally speaking, that's not the temperament of someone who's been so emotionally scarred by these creatures that he would willingly announce that he hates them. I honestly hope that we get the better version of Dr. Alan Grant returning in this movie. I really wonder how he's going to interact with the characters, although I can make an educated guess. I have a feeling that the alumni characters are going to be the characters that are from Jurassic Park. They're going to be in Camp A, that basically is going to be like the dinosaurs should be destroyed, they've caused an ecological disaster, and we basically shouldn't be concerned about their lives whatsoever. Whereas the cast from Jurassic World in Camp B is like, no, these animals are our responsibility. We have to make sure that they are taken care of. They don't deserve to die, even though we created them. I have a feeling that it's going to be the clash of ideologies, because Owen Grady is almost like the exact opposite of Alan Grant, whereas, effectively speaking, like Alan, he's fearful and very paranoid about the dinosaurs, whereas Owen, especially the raptors, Owen is basically going to be the one who's really just kind of the dinosaur whisperer at this point. But don't get me wrong, I'll talk more about that in the future. As for what I hope they do with Dr. Grant in this movie, well, it circles back around to what I said about Dr. Sattler. The thing that I noticed from the trailers is that Grant refers to her as Dr. Ellie Sattler. And that's huge, because that means she's not using her married name, as in when she married Mark Diegler, I think. A huge piece of evidence right there. Now, it could just be the trailers being edited to where she basically is being pronounced by the name that we would most know her as, because I doubt that you guys even knew who the Diegler last name even was. But still, it could be evidence that after all this time, it has been more than 20 years, maybe she and Mark got divorced. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, because Mark seemed like a pretty decent guy, and they have a child together. Yeah, they have two kids. So the point is that a lot of us were sort of rubbed the wrong way when that was revealed in Jurassic Park 3, because, like I said, Jurassic Park 1 was all about Grant learning to like kids and be ready to be the father of Ellie's kids. And yet, Jurassic Park 3 implies that they broke up, and now Ellie has gone and married someone else. Granted, I know that that's how it is in the novel, but like I said, the novels and the movies are almost completely separate entities. Even though basically one can draw from the other, but the relationship was a creation of the movie, you can't just drop it. You have to basically make sure that it goes somewhere, because the relationship between Owen and Claire is clearly going somewhere. But anyways, the point that I'm getting at here is that I hope that after all this time, they put Grant and Ellie back together, and they rediscovered that chemistry that they had, to the point where they realized they wasted their lives looking for something else when they should have been together the entire time. I would love it if this movie ends with Dr. Grant and Ellie Sattler getting together again. So, because not only do they, as actors, have incredible chemistry with each other, the characters themselves are meant to have chemistry. And you can tell that that's the way that they were written. Take, for example, that scene in Jurassic Park 3 when they're talking about the raptors. Literally speaking, I mentioned that Ellie, she somewhat doesn't want to talk about it as much as Grant does, but she still ends up getting just as excited as Grant does when he starts postulating his theories, and it goes to show how much chemistry that they have, not only working with each other as co-workers, as part of a team, but also the relationship that is between them. Effectively speaking, you want to see these two get together. And the best part about it is that that scene from Jurassic Park 3 is based on a deleted scene from the original Jurassic Park movie. That movie, the footage of it has basically been lost to time, but the shooting script still has the dialogue that shows exactly how Grant and Ellie work as a team. Grant postulates what he has discovered. Ellie basically continues his thought by coming to a sort of conclusion about that. Grant continues her thought process. Ellie continues that, and they both eventually come to the same conclusion. It shows just basically how well this meeting of minds works together, and how their passion and love of dinosaurs brought them together. So you kind of want to see them get together, and I really would feel vindicated after all these years to finally see them together again. That's what I'm hoping for with Dr. Grant in this movie. I'm hoping that he and Ellie finally get together, they have their happy ending, and I really hope that Grant doesn't get killed by the end of this one, which I am realizing is a very distinct possibility, considering it seemed like a very long shot to get Sam Neill to come back for this franchise, because working on Jurassic Park 3 upset him that much, and he basically said that Grant probably won't return to the franchise because, quote, nobody can find Grant. He's basically implying that Grant has either gone into hiding, secluded himself from the rest of the world, or has died somewhere, and nobody is all the wiser about it. The only evidence found of Grant is his hat flowing down the river somewhere in Montana. So I really hope that Sam Neill, Dr. Grant, doesn't get killed in this movie, and I really hope that we finally get resolution on his and Dr. Sattler's character and relationship. But I've talked enough about that. Let's get into the stuff that I'm really excited about. The point in the trailer that got me so hyped that I literally basically was watching it. I went into the trailer thinking, where's the hype? Where's the hype? Where's the hype? I was only able to have that mantra for about 7 seconds, because what I saw in the trailer literally blew me away so much that I knew the hype was real. The hype is alive. And what was that? Well, let me explain. In Jurassic World, a lot of us were really worried at the trailers, basically showing that the velociraptors had, for want of a better term, been tamed in a sort of way, because of the whole motorcycle scene with them running off into the jungle alongside Owen on his motorcycle, and especially the scene in the corral where Owen is holding them off with his with a hand gesture, and they're basically not attacking him. The idea that he's basically training these animals to be domesticated, for want of a better term, and that was upsetting, because the raptors in Jurassic Park, it's not 100% one-to-one, but I'm pretty sure that they are the only animals that are designed to be the scary dinosaurs. They are designed to be the movie monsters that you expect when watching Jurassic Park. More so in the movies rather than the novel, but even the novel goes as far as to say that the raptors are the only animals in the park that actually enjoy killing, and even kill when they're not hungry. Effectively speaking, the raptors that are depicted in Jurassic Park are a bit psychotic, although there's a reason for that, as, effectively speaking, the animals that were raised in captivity by the InGen staff, they're the ones that are most psychologically violent, and the ones that have a tendency for murder and actually have an active grudge against humanity. Whereas the ones that were born in the wild, in the hidden raptor population that had been growing out of control on the island, well, they're the ones that basically were a bit more, I would say, reasonable. They basically were smarter animals that weren't feral, but they weren't violent either. Effectively speaking, they knew to basically keep themselves hidden and not draw the attention of the humans, because they effectively knew that if they did, the humans would come around and round them up. And they were a lot more of a peaceful species. So effectively speaking, like the raptors, the book is making a commentary that the raptors that were bred in captivity and isolation are not functioning as well as the raptors that were born free in the wild. But then again, there's the entirety of the Lost World novel, but that's an entirely different situation, a whole new can of worms to explore. But the point that I'm trying to get here is that The raptors were supposed to be scary, and a lot of us were afraid that what was happening with Blue and all the other raptors in Jurassic World was going to make them significantly less scary. Although I would hope that after all these years, having seen the movies, we basically can breathe a sigh of relief because this scene with Owen basically holding off the raptors isn't an indication that he's tamed them at all. Because the moment that Owen turned his back, they rushed him. They would have mauled him to death if he hadn't gotten out of the cage. It was only a matter of time before they sprang on him, and so he basically took the opportune moment to get out while the going was good. And plus, at the end of the movie, when they're hunting the Indominus Rex, they immediately turn on mankind and go back to being the ruthless human-killing machines that we knew them from the franchise, because they had an alpha who encouraged this kind of behavior. Granted, they basically were able to come back around because Owen imprinted on them, and they have a great deal of loyalty to him. And that's basically like, it's how it goes, because raptors, they're social animals, and social animals really don't turn on the animals that they consider part of their family or peer group. It's basically why certain animals can be tamed to be loyal to human beings. The difference between social animals and non-social animals is that at some point, non-social animals will lose whatever parental or familial instincts they have for one another and would sooner kill each other as bright as day. But social animals retain that kind of instinctual capacity for, I guess, empathy and comradeship, loyalty. So, anyways, needless to say, Blue ended up being one of the most interesting and excitable moments of the entire movie for me, and I'm really interested in what they have done with them, particularly in speculating about what Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom could have led to in regards to this animal. This here is Delta. She is a member of the Raptor Squad who came from an older, different egg group than Blue did. So it's important to establish that they're not siblings. They are basically members of the same pack that came from different genetic bunches, I should say. Now, Delta was older than Blue, and she was larger and actually more aggressive than her. Now, keep that in mind because that's going to be important. We see that throughout the movie, Delta is the one who is actually most aggressive towards human beings, especially when it comes to Hoskins. Like, she doesn't hesitate to seize the opportunity to take his arm off when he's basically trying to be gentle with her, and even when the Indominus Rex tries to convince the Raptors to turn on Owen, Delta is the one who turns around and snarls at him because she knows that it's finally time to basically usurp his authority. So why am I talking so much about Delta? Because a lot of people began to speculate as to Delta's true fate from going from Jurassic World to Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. And I gotta admit, I was in the camp that speculated this. Let's talk about it. During the climax of the movie, when the Raptors are fighting the Indominus Rex, we see Delta get grabbed by the Indominus' mouth, her body goes limp, and she is thrown off-screen to the left, somewhere down the street from the main road of Jurassic World, the main strip. It's off to the left, and she's off camera. So we don't see exactly what happens to her body, as opposed to Echo, who lands on the grill of Winston Steak's restaurant and gets burned to death. It could be that, much like how Blue was swatted away by the Indominus and we all assumed that she was dead, maybe the attack just knocked her out and she survived, and that's how she was able to come back and help Rexy fight the Indominus. So a lot of us began to think, just because Delta doesn't come back to finish the fight doesn't necessarily mean that she's dead, especially considering at the end when Owen basically tells Blue that she can't come with them and she's on her own now. Blue goes off down the main strip of Jurassic World calling out with her raptor call, trying to find other raptors so that she can basically form a pack again. And we don't see Blue's mouth movements when we hear a second call being made, as if someone who's not on screen is answering her, and Blue ends up veering off to the left and going to the left of the main strip, where Delta was thrown. So, it was speculated that Delta could possibly have survived and been alive all this time, and we liked that theory for two reasons. One, it meant that Blue wasn't entirely alone, because as a social animal and as a raptor without a pack is almost guaranteed certain death. Effectively speaking, an animal like Blue, she's probably the most intelligent and a very powerful animal on that island, but without a pack, she won't be able to sustain herself for long. And worse, as the only surviving velociraptor in existence, her death is extinction of the species. So we wanted Delta to be alive for that specific reason, so that Blue wouldn't be alone, and also because of what it inherently meant. Because you guys remember this poster? Yep. This was the poster that I made back in my 14-year-long journey video, where I speculated as to what Jurassic World as a franchise would be going towards, and I postulated the idea that Fallen Kingdom was the real movie that the makers of the film wanted to do before they realized they had to do Jurassic World. Now, I know you can make the argument that the rest of the poster is them building the park in the background, but I'm focusing on the imagery of what here is a raptor that's clearly meant to be Blue, standing on the overturned Ford Explorer from the first movie, the same car that Lex and Tim were trapped in when the Rex attacked. We see this imagery appear again in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom when Owen finally finds Blue. He's searching for her, he comes across the Ford Explorer, and Blue appears, having revealed herself on top of the car, just like in this shot. Now, I want you to take a closer look at this shot. Well, I'm finally going to focus on a detail that I intentionally overlooked the first time, because I was planning to make a video on it back before Fallen Kingdom came out, but I ran out of time for the speculation, and it just seemed like the theory was already dead with the destruction of Isla Nublar. But what do you see in this poster that has huge implications for the future? Specifically, what is Blue standing on top of? Can't see it? Let me give you a closer look. It's a nest of eggs that has been nestled into basically the wheelhouse of the carapace of the car. Effectively speaking, this right here was a clue and an indication that in the minds of the writers throughout this entire franchise, Blue at some point was destined to be a mama. She was destined to give birth to other members of her species. Now, I think you all know where I'm going with this, but let me just keep on talking about it. I really was hoping that this would have come to fruition in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Why? Because there was something about Fallen Kingdom that really just rubbed me the wrong way when they said that Blue was the last of her species. Because that means that when Blue goes, the velociraptors are gone for good. So, kind of a dour ending for such an iconic animal from such an iconic franchise. So, what's the solution here? Well, like I said, we all speculated as to whether or not Delta was still alive. And what could Delta being alive mean? Well, due to the haphazard genetics of the dinosaurs from Jurassic Park, in a single-sex environment in the wild, the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park have the ability to basically transition from female to male, which is what caused the problems in the first Jurassic Park movie as well as the Jurassic Park novel. So it was speculated that by virtue of being more aggressive than Blue was, Delta could, in theory, have transitioned into being a male, and then the two of them could become a mated pair. That the two of them could then mate, and that that would result in the clutch of eggs that we see before us right here. And it was an exciting idea because we certainly didn't want the raptor population to end with just Blue. But even more than that, the novel basically describes that there was an entire breeding population of raptors that existed on the island, completely in secret, that the Jurassic Park staff never took notice of. And I know that all you are thinking, that's just unrealistic. The people who built Jurassic World would have totally discovered the population of raptors. No, it's actually not all that realistic, and it's actually not that far-fetched. Like I said, the raptors in the wild were smarter than the ones that were bred in captivity. They knew to avoid humans instead of going around picking a fight with them, because, effectively speaking, they knew that if they drew the attention of the humans, they would either be rounded up and killed or put back into cages, and they didn't want that. What they wanted was to get off the island, which that is entirely its own can of worms, but still. So maybe there was a population of raptors that could be on the island, and maybe Blue could have partnered up with one of them to get her own clutch of eggs. But all this seemed rather moot, considering that Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom came and went, and there was no reference to there being any other raptors on the island except for Blue. Which honestly might not be a deal clincher, because Delta could just have easily been alive, it's just that they didn't know to look for her, or him. But the thing about it is, if Delta and Blue had mated by then why wouldn't Delta have been around? Because the moment that Blue got captured, Delta would have come to her rescue. Effectively would have been far more aggressive to protect not just his mate, but his future progeny, if Blue was pregnant at that time. And they don't reference Delta at all in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. There's no reference of any other raptors being on the island. So it looks like those two theories remain to this day busted. However, I do think at some point, those were all just interesting ideas that I could go along with. However, Blue in the franchise, she remains such an interesting and fascinating character that it was such a kind of a dour note to know that she was the last of her kind, that the Velociraptor species would end with her, and it just didn't sit right with all of us. Not just because of the fact that Blue is alone. Like, take for example that scene at the end of Fallen Kingdom. She's running through the desert, she comes across a valley that has a suburban area, suburbs down below. She's giving out the raptor call, trying to find members of her own kind, only to be met with silence. So that right there is an indication that Blue is alone, and she basically is going to remain alone, possibly forever, constantly looking for the members of her own species that are never going to exist. It puts on a much more dour ending that kind of distracts from the fact that by finding that suburban area, she's basically found her new hunting ground, and she's got a whole lot of helpless victims that she can easily pick off. But the other thing that is kind of the dour ending is because the Velociraptors are such an iconic and dangerous animal from the Jurassic Park series that it's so weird to consider that there's only one left in all of existence, that the raptors were such a fact of life that you kind of basically don't want to see them go, especially because it kind of lessens their threat factor. Blue has become such a recognizable and likable character in these movies that it's going to make no sense if she reverts back to being violent and being the bad guy who you're going to want to see taken down. It just wouldn't work that way. So I kept asking the movie, if you're not going to use velociraptors as kind of like the dangerous fodder dinosaurs, who are you going to have for your big bad guys? Well, the answer is other rival genetics engineering companies just make their own raptors. Different species of raptors, in fact. You got pyroraptors and atrociraptors, which actually are a real thing, by the way. Look it up. They're Canadian. So, but needless to say, I've been talking about Blue all this time, and I basically talked about how this was the one factor that got me hyped for what the movie was going to do. So what exactly am I talking about? Well, like I said, when I was watching the trailers, It was a complete jaw-dropping moment, and it took me a full minute to actually process what I had seen when I realized this. Blue has a baby. Blue has a goddamn baby. And like I said, it took me a full minute to process this because when I first saw it, I thought I was seeing a flashback, kind of like in Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, where we see a baby Blue interacting with Owen. And then it struck me, why would this flashback be taking place in the snow, and how could it be taking place in the snow? And wouldn't Owen be with her? Why would there be an adult raptor? And it took me a while to realize that adult raptor is Blue, meaning that this baby isn't Blue. It's Blue's baby. And I'm like thinking, oh my god! This literally changed everything. And even though the last few theories that I posted were basically kind of debunked, I can't help but feel a sense of validation and vindication at the idea that Blue has become a mother. So the million-dollar question is, how has she become a mother? So like I said, the question is, when did Blue become pregnant? Because, I mean, maybe it's possible that there was another raptor, maybe even Delta, back on Isla Nublar. Maybe they had just finished mating by the time Owen had showed up, to the point where neither of them would truly be aware of the fact that Blue was pregnant. Or, and that would actually add a whole lot more tension to the movie, considering that Blue ends up losing a lot of blood and ends up needing a blood transfusion. However, I honestly don't think that that's the case. It could be, because Delta and any other raptors that were on Isla Nublar could have easily been wiped out via the volcano because no one was coming to save them. So what are the other options? Well, take a look at this baby. Baby Blue there is, it's almost 1-to-1. She is almost an exact replica of her mother. And yeah, I'm calling it right now. I am basically almost convinced that animal is going to be a she, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. Effectively speaking, what I'm basically getting at is it's fully possible that Blue might be the first velociraptor in the franchise that is capable of aparthenogenesis. She can fertilize her own eggs and reproduce asexually. Kind of like that lizard that's out in the Nevada desert. I can't remember the name of the lizard, even though I've looked it up several times. There's a species of lizard that's out there that is capable of aparthenogenesis, asexual reproduction, where every single new generation that follows is an exact replica of its parent in genetic code, which means that if Blue is able to do aparthenogenesis just like that lizard is, then this baby is an exact replica of her. But why and how? How did it get to this point? Well, let's examine more trailers that we've gotten since the first trailer dropped and we got this revelation that Blue had a baby. Effectively speaking, let me see. Ooh, I'm giving myself a headache here. We see Dr. Wu talking about he did something to Blue, but he had no choice. He had to do it. So that is basically implying that this baby is somehow the result of Wu's genetic tampering. That what he did resulted in this creature. So what could he have done? Well, think back to Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. The Indoraptor project was basically not going to work the way that they had intended it to work, because by creating a creature that has so many conflicting predatory instincts and only knows the desire to kill, they effectively created a sociopath, An animal that knows the difference between right and wrong, but doesn't care about it. A creature that you can tell by looking at the way it moves and behaves, it actively enjoys killing. It enjoys toying with its prey and going in to make the kill as satisfying as possible. The Indoraptor was a monster, meaning that despite the fact that it's good at killing, it could never be controlled the way that they needed it to be in order to sell it as a living weapon. So, what was the plan? The plan was they needed to get Blue, not just to have for her DNA, but also as a behavioral specimen. They intended to basically breed the next series of Indoraptors using Blue's DNA so that they would basically kind of have her genetic disposition and, even better, recognize her authority. Effectively speaking, Henry puts it best in the movie itself when he says, quote, "It needs a mother." Effectively speaking, the idea was that the Indoraptors would be bred using Blue's genetic traits, and then she would raise them as her own children, teaching them her propensity for being gentle, for being curious, for being empathetic, and most of all, being agreeable, as in an animal that you could more or less domesticate in a sort of sense. She would basically be more receptive to basically being conditioned to follow orders, because that's how she was able to bond with Owen the way that she did. So all that being said, it makes me wonder how that plan was going to work out, because even if you breed an animal using the DNA for another animal, you can't just basically take that newborn baby and give it to the adult and expect them to instantly bond. The baby might try to imprint on the adult because it doesn't know any better and probably does assume that it's his mother. But with an animal like Blue, yeah, she'd straight up eat whatever Indominus babies were put in front of her. I mean, it's basically like whenever you have a cat and you bring home a newborn kitten. That kitten is going to assume that the cat you have is its parents, but the older cat isn't going to want anything to do with this. It's like you're forcing responsibility onto me. So what's the solution? Well, maybe it's not enough to actively use Blue's DNA to breed them. Maybe she actively has to give birth to them. Maybe what Henry was planning was that he was to take the genetic cocktail of the Indoraptor and artificially inseminate Blue's eggs so that she'd produce a clutch of Indoraptors. Effectively speaking, if she were to give birth directly to them, she would have no choice but to imprint on them and have the maternal instinct to protect and raise them. So, and like the series has always said, Jurassic Park and Jurassic World have taken measures to prevent the animals from breeding. Now, it could be that they've long since fixed the genetic mix-up that allows the raptors to transition from male to female, but they still breed them all as only female just in case. And the novels imply that they also try to sterilize the females in order to prevent them from getting impregnated, even in the event that they actually did have a male. So what if Blue was designed to have her reproductive cycle stunted, and in the brief time that Henry Wu had her in his lab in Fallen Kingdom, he had to basically go in there and undo the tampering that would prevent her from breeding and allow her to not only begin her reproductive cycle again, but to also bring her into receptivity as a way, bring her into heat, as it were, so that she would be ready to breed. So, what I'm saying is that whatever this baby version of Blue is, Henry Wu must have caused it some way. I'm actually somewhat leaning towards the aparthenogenesis, but I'm actually thinking that it might have been a complete accident. That Henry, in trying to awaken her dormant, latent ability and biological instinctual need to breed, accidentally resulted in her becoming a self-breeder, being able to reproduce asexually. So, I mean, it's like this franchise always says, life finds a way. So, that's what I'm thinking of. An attempt to basically turn Blue into an Indoraptor factory. They accidentally created another Blue. But who knows? Maybe it wasn't accidental at all. Maybe it was fully intentional. Like I said, if this Blue truly is an exact copy of her mother, the way that I'm assuming that she is, then it could be that Henry was seeing the writing on the wall that Blue isn't going to live forever, and while the future generation of Indoraptors might be able to teach their children, we're going to eventually need more persuasive and more agreeable velociraptors to be the behavioral genetic specimen that the Indos can imprint onto. So, what if Henry actually fully intended to have Blue produce a clone of herself so that that clone could grow up and basically join her as an Indoraptor breeding factory? Now, that sounds incredibly dark, but what I'm basically saying is that there's so much to speculate on. We don't even know if this is the only child that Blue has had. It's probably the only one that survived, but still, a raptor can lay a dozen eggs, most likely. So the others probably didn't make it. So this one truly is special, but who knows what else Blue is capable of, and I want to find out so much more about it, and that's why I am undoubtedly so hyped for this movie now. I could honestly care less about anything else. The returning cast, that's gravy. Seeing the dinosaurs spreading all across the world, that's nothing. Seeing the Quetzalcoatlus, the Pyroraptors, the Atrociraptors, the Allosaurus and the Carnotaurus fighting each other in gladiator-style combat, nothing. All the feathered dinosaurs, I couldn't care less. The Giganotosaurus, get that shit out of here. It's overblown spectacle that the other movies have been accused of. This is the substance that I care about. I want to know everything there is to know about this baby. I want to know where it comes from, and I want to know how its story is going to play out. That's honestly one of the things I'm afraid of, because I've actually seen more of this baby in the trailers than I've seen of Blue herself, because I think that it's obvious at this point the baby is going to get kidnapped by, I don't know, maybe Henry Wu or maybe Biosyn, and it's going to be separated from Blue. So the story is that Owen and his team, they're going to go and rescue this baby, and then they're eventually going to come across Grant and Sattler and everyone else, and that's how the two stories are eventually going to collide. What I'm worried about is that I want Blue to survive this movie. So I really hope that when the baby gets captured, I hope that Blue doesn't get killed, because I hope that she puts her faith in Owen to rescue her child and bring her baby back to her, because I would really hate for Blue to get killed after all this time of being such a likable raptor character and finally having the family that she had been looking for the last two movies. And let's just face it, I'm not in any kind of emotional state to where I can handle a live-action reinterpretation of The Land Before Time. No. Never again. Can't. I'm not. So, I understand that mother and child will probably be separated, but I want them to be reunited by the end. So, that's why I'm so excited about Jurassic World Dominion. Jurassic Park is a franchise that is very near and dear to me. it began in the same year that I came into this world. And so, in a lot of ways, the movie and we literally grew up together. And over the years, I have watched it basically strive and reach greatness only to be spit upon, to be cast down and rejected by people who literally didn't know what they were talking about, by people who just didn't get it, by people who literally made it their prerogative to not understand, to reject, to just flat out get it wrong. And that's why I'm a bit upset, because Jurassic Park as a franchise, I think that even by virtue of being a Spielberg franchise, an Amblin Entertainment movie, is so much different from every other movie in Hollywood. Its bar is so high that even at the franchise's lowest point, it's still of a greater quality than most of the schlock that comes out of Hollywood nowadays. Effectively speaking, Jurassic Park is a franchise that is special, and I am of the camp that chooses to love the Jurassic Park novel and love the Jurassic Park movies even more because of what they represent. They're not a clean and perfect adaptation of the novel, but they are adapting the novel in such a strange and unique way. Because, as I've said, every single movie across the entirety of the franchise is adapting a different piece of the novel from the original book. Little bits and pieces. The first movie told the overall story, which left a whole lot of details out. The second movie brought those pieces back and put them into context. The third movie, it did what it could. It recycled some movies. Jurassic World brought the theme and the heart of the franchise back. And Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom brought the conclusion to the novel back. The island is destroyed, but the animals have gotten off the island regardless. So no matter what, the chaos is going to continue. So that's what makes the Jurassic Park franchise so special in how unique it is. It's a movie franchise that is unlike any other novel-to-film adaptation in history, because instead of telling just a one-to-one, one book to one movie, or one movie to one book, it's stretching out the one book across the entire film franchise until we get to this point. And so, all we can do now is speculate as to what comes ahead, and why Jurassic World Dominion has a whole lot to live up to. And I gotta admit, I'm kind of worried about it, because, like I said, it's the last few movies have followed everything up to this point, so now, what exactly is Jurassic World going to do to end the franchise, to where the Jurassic World trilogy finally reconciles with the Jurassic Park trilogy? Well, one thing that I'm worried about is, judging by all the trailers I've seen, I actually haven't seen much in terms of what they could adapt from the novel, because I think it's because we've already reached the end point of the novels from Fallen Kingdom, to where now we can only adapt what has been speculated on. And all the speculations have come from bad people like Lewis Dodgson to good people like Ian Malcolm. Malcolm, who was warning about what would happen if genetic engineering technology was left in irresponsible hands and how out of control it would all get. Those warnings are now going to come to fruition, whereas Lewis Dodgson of Biosyn is finally going to have the access to the dinosaur DNA that he spent $500,000 trying to get back 30 years ago. And now, all the things that he basically wanted to do for Biosyn, he'll finally be able to do. I mean, honestly, that's probably the one thing that I should be most excited about. The return of rival genetics engineering company Biosyn, and the return and most likely conclusion of Dr. Lewis Dodgson. Dodgson, we've got Dodgson here! This guy from Jurassic Park wasn't all that much. In the Jurassic Park novel, he's only in a few chapters where they talk about how ruthless he is, and he's up to some pretty bad stuff, but he disappears after he gives Nedry the first payment, because there was no way to fit him into the novel, the rest of the novel after that. He comes back in The Lost World, and I gotta say, Lewis Dodson is an underrated villain, because Dodson in the novels is a complete bastard. This guy, he's a psychopath, and he deserves to be stopped. And I can only speculate as to what kind of damage he has done to the world after the last 30 years since we last saw him having lunch with Nedry in Costa Rica. So, effectively speaking, what can we expect from Dodson? It's going to be frightening, it's going to be dangerous, but I can almost guarantee he's definitely going to get killed, because he's a character that deserves to get killed. I mean, you guys want an example of how ruthless Lewis Dodson is? The novel describes him as being the most aggressive geneticist of his generation, to the point where Biosyn was working on a new vaccine to cure rabies, and they wanted to test it so badly on human subjects without wanting to go through FDA regulations that Dodson genetically engineered a strain of the rabies virus to pass through the blood-brain barrier, meaning that it could be dispersed through the air. Dodson created a variant of rabies that was then an airborne virus. He created this thing and took a vial of it on his person, in his luggage, on a commercial flight to South America. A commercial flight in an unmarked bag, which easily could have been jostled to the point where the vial could have been broken, and that virus could have been released onto the unsuspecting passengers of the plane, and an epidemic of rabies could have spread out. But what did Dodson choose to do with it when he got to his destination? He chose to unleash it on a village of unsuspecting Chilean farmers. He purposefully infected these people with the rabies virus so that after a few weeks, when they realized that they were sick, he could step in and say, "Hey, my company just so happens to have a new vaccine for rabies. Line up and get your shot." Effectively speaking, he basically purposefully created a more dangerous version of an already deadly virus that could have easily spread and become an epidemic, just so that he could test his vaccine for it on a group of what the novel describes as unsuspecting, ignorant peasants. His words, not mine. Or not Michael's. So the idea is that this guy is a monster. He's really more monstrous than any of the dinosaurs that have been made in Jurassic Park. And so seeing how he's going to be depicted in Dominion, and most of all, how he's going to be taken out, yeah, this movie has a lot riding on it. So, good luck, Jurassic World. Don't let us down. We're literally all counting on you. I really hope that Rexy gets to take him out in a way that's similar. Nope. Even better. Rexy can't be the one to take out Dodson, because Dodson's death from the Lost World novel was given to Ludlow at the end of the Lost World movie. So, the only approximation is it has to be Blue and her baby. Yep. Blue has to be the one to take down Dodson, but not kill him. No, she has to cripple him, and then leave him struggling and weak so that her baby can get her first kill. Yep, that'll be Blue teaching her baby how to hunt. And it'll be a fitting end to Dodson, and a nice little parallel to how he dies in the Lost World novel. being ripped apart by baby T-Rexes. Only now, it'll be a baby raptor. But anyways, that's all that I've got time for today. Hope that you guys enjoyed this little rant and ramble that I basically have gone on. And I hope that you guys are excited for Jurassic World Dominion as much as I am. So, all that being said, I really hope that people at least give this sequel a chance and finally come around to realizing that the Jurassic Park franchise is different from all the others that you basically lump together in the same Hollywood bubble. It's actually something that's genuinely special and something that deserves preservation. And recognition. I am the Linkzilla. If you like this video, please leave a comment down in the comment section below. Like it, share it with your friends. You want to keep up to date with more Jurassic World content coming at you in the future, be sure to smash that subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications. And as always, I will catch you guys in the next video. Later!